Fantasy rich, fantasy poor. Let's
Welcome
start with
well-oiled machine, Pat.
Yes,
Really
that's
rolling
what we
out the red
are.
carpet for you.
Nothing else but a well-oiled machine.
Awful.
The fantasy rich matchup of the week. Bills
You know what? We're the Commanders' offense of television production right now.
I am not dying on that ship right now. That's
I am. My name's on the show.
Yes, that's
pretty
true.
much this is the ship that I am going down with.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Let's talk about a great offense, and that has to be the Buffalo Bills, who are favored against the Chiefs this week.
On the road.
On the road, which really says a lot about the Bills right now, favored by 2.5 points. Over-under at 54. I mean, this is a layup question, but when you look at this game, besides the obvious, what makes it such a fantasy-rich matchup individually?
Yeah, I didn't exactly kind of go into left field here to pick this game, but even compared to where the Bills were last year, they are extremely pass-heavy this year. If you look at their pass rate relative to game script, they're nearly 3 times as pass-heavy as last season. Last year, looking at pass rate over expected, they hit an 11% pass rate expected just 3 times in 20 games. They've hit that already 3 times this year. Then if you go to the other side of the game, the Chiefs have hit that same ultra pass-heavy mark in every game this season. So these are two offenses that are going to be pushing each other. They're going to be pushing each other into a shootout script. This is exactly what we need for the Bills, who've been pulling their starters because they've been beating teams so badly. So this is going to be an excellent game to start all your Bills. Pretty obvious starts here for the most part, but you're definitely going to want to start Gabe Davis here. One guy who jumps out is Devin Singletary. He only played 54% of the snaps against the Steelers, but this was a game where Case Keenum played 14% of the snaps, so not worried about that. He played 100% of the snaps the last time these two teams played, and he's been heavily involved whenever the Bills have been in competitive game scripts this year.
Yeah, playing 76% of the snaps in games in which the Bills are close or trailing. And to your point about Singletary being involved in the passing game, he's 4th in receptions. He's got the 2nd most receiving yards among running backs as well. And so Singletary, going to me, I'm in on Devin Singletary here. I have him as a top 20 play this week, and you convinced me right there. I'm going to start Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes as well. So,
Bold.
Well, you listen to Kerrane, talk about,
it's great to have him here.
How they're passing at such a high rate. I'm like, okay, sounds good. I'm in on Mahomes and Allen as both starts this week. But real talk, I mean, I just think that it is, whether it is DFS, whether it is when you're looking at sort of the fringe guys, if you will, you want fantasy-rich environments, and this one has all the makings of just a massive, massive shootout. So I think that if you're sitting there in the wide receiver 3-4 range trying to decide, this guy or that guy, and one of the guys you're considering is Gabe Davis or Devin Singletary, I think you do that as well. Again, he's played on 96% of the snaps in 3 or 4 games this year. Gabe Davis is. He's fully healthy. He's off the injury list. He was on it a little bit last week. There was concerns about the flu in week 1 and everything like that. So the Chiefs, who have allowed 7 touchdowns to wide receivers so far this year, that's tied for the 3rd most of the position. You already know the 4-touchdown game or whatever, and Gabe Davis coming off a monster game. Everyone's already starting him, but I think you can feel more confident about it going into this game.
Been a little bit of a disappointing season for Juju Smith-Schuster so far. Do you think this is the kind of shootout that can get him back on track?
You would certainly hope so. I mean, I will tell you that I'm not super optimistic just based on the fact that, there have been other games in which the Chiefs have scored a lot of points and Juju just hasn't been there. He's been held to under 14 fantasy points in every game this year. He's had 3 games with single-digit fantasy points. He hasn't scored a touchdown through 5 games. If ever there was a game to get Juju off the schneid, as it were, it is here. But he is, as we talked about in the last segment, he's a wide receiver 3. What do we talk about? Wide receivers 3s are basically guys that have upside. He has the upside because his quarterback is Mahomes. He's in it. We're going to be a very friendly game script. But warts, because again, the usage has been all over the place, and watch Noah Gray get 2 touchdowns in this one. You don't know with the Chiefs as well. So I have him at wide receiver 34. Pat, where are you on Juju this week?
I feel very similarly. I mean, you want the full point PPR if you're putting Juju in your lineup. I think it's just a volume play. You're playing for targets, you're playing for receptions, you're playing for this game to have a ton of both. But I still don't feel that confident in Juju. I think a lot of it could funnel to Kelsey.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I'm at wide receiver 34, so he's actually more of a wide receiver 4 for me. High-end wide receiver 4 for me this week.
One of the only pessimistic sides offensively of this game has to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire with Buffalo's rush defense right now, allowing the fewest rush yards per carry this season right now. But knowing how often the Chiefs' aerial attack can get them in the red area, do you still trust? I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a top 10 running back in fantasy right now. Is that something that can continue despite the matchup?
Well, he makes me nervous. Like, I'm at 26, right? So I'm running back 26 this week. So I'm as a flex, right? I mean, listen, Jerick McKinnon played more snaps last week, and he's had under 12 rush attempts in every game this year, but one, of course, the one where I told everyone to bet the under. That was the one where he went over. Thanks, CEH. There doesn't seem to be a lot of rhyme or reason to how the Chiefs use their running backs. Feels a little hot-handy, Andy Reid sort of like gut call, if you will, because like you're like, oh, well, they were trailing last week, they were trailing last week to the Raiders, but it's not like CEH hasn't been used in the passing game. He has been. So So for me, it just feels like it is a little bit of how lucky do you feel. To your point, the Bills are an unbelievably good run defense so far this year. They're second against the run in terms of rushing yards allowed. So he really needs a touchdown to pay off. 42% of his fantasy points this year have come from touchdowns. It feels like what we heard Mahomes say at the beginning of the year about wide receivers, like every week it's going to be someone different, feels that way about running backs, Pat.
For sure. And McKinnon, he has had 79% of the third down snaps. So I think if the Chiefs are really trailing in true come-from-behind mode, it could be McKinnon out there. I completely agree that CEH is touchdown dependent.
All right, looking over to Bucs at Steelers, our second fantasy-rich matchup.
Real quickly before we move off this game, I just want to say that Isaiah McKenzie looks like he's going to play out of the concussion protocol, but Khalil Shakur really impressed, and so I'm a little nervous about McKenzie. I wonder if Shakur has earned more playing time in that slot. Like, if I'm picking between these two, I prefer McKenzie this week, but that's one that, even though we're saying it's a fantasy-rich environment, that one makes me a little nervous because I can't tell sort of yet how that's going to shake out.
Maybe they cancel each other out.
He could be the new Crowder, stealing some of that role.
Yeah, he definitely has the talent to do so. Bucs, Steelers, the Bucs favored by 8.5 points on the road at Pittsburgh. That tells you where Pittsburgh is at right now on both sides of the ball. The over-under in this game, only 45. So we call it a fantasy-rich matchup, but that is because of the Bucs, right, Pat?
It is very much because of the Bucs. They have transformed back into the Bucs from last year. They had the second highest pass rate over expected of the entire season last week against the Falcons. A couple reasons for this. They have their wide receivers back, but they've also played weak pass rushes over the last couple weeks, and they are protecting Brady. In Week 5, Tom Brady was pressured at the second lowest rate of the week. In Week 4, he was pressured at the lowest rate. The Steelers are a really good matchup for the Bucs for a couple reasons. They don't pressure the passer, so we should have the same dynamic where Brady's able to sit back, pick apart this defense. They're also way more willing to pass the ball than the Falcons. So they should be able to kind of get in on the fun a little bit where the Falcons are trying to bleed the clock as much as possible. And then Gabe Davis just proved last week that this defense can be beat deep. I think Mike Evans is a very interesting play here for that reason. On the Steelers side, I think you want to play this through the wide receivers. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. I don't really feel that good about Najee Harris, even in potentially an up-tempo game environment. His target share down from 14% last year to just 9% this year.
I feel like you don't feel good about Najee Harris because you've watched some football in your life. I feel that's also, it's slow as molasses here. But I'm with you on Brady. Like, starting, weeks 4 and 5, the weeks that he got Godwin and Evans back, he's quarterback 4.
He's Brady again.
He's Brady again. He's 45 fantasy points total in the last 2 weeks combined. And to your point, against a Steelers defense that's bottom 3 in the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns allowed, all in on Brady this week. He made the love list. You're obviously starting Godwin and Evans as well. I think Uncle Lenny, again, game script, they're almost 2 touchdown favorites in this game as well. And so the expectation here, or over a touchdown favorite, I should say, against Pittsburgh, I think it's 8.5. The game script should work favorably for Leonard Fournette. We might even see some Rachaad White.
That's where I want to go with this.
Yeah.
Well, this game gets so out of hand that White doesn't even just have a niche role. He's eventually just on the field in the second half.
Yeah, I think he's, if you are dealing with if you're in a league where, like I have Damian Pierce and Josh Jacobs and I'm really scrambling for a running back this week, or, I don't have Derrick Henry or DeAndre Swift this week. It's a bad week for running backs, right? And a couple of the guys are banged up. That I don't mind Rachaad White as a flex play. It's kind of a desperation flex play, like in a 12-team or deeper league. I'm with you on Najee Harris. Outside my top 20 this week, he is on the hate list. He is a pray he falls into the end zone play this week. That's what you're doing if you're starting him.
A lot of running into walls for Najee Harris this year so far. Our last fantasy-rich matchup, Cardinals favored over Seattle on the road to Seattle. We know how much that Seahawks defense has struggled, not just with injuries, but on the field as well. The over-under is at 50.5 in this one. Pat, starting on the Arizona side, no James Conner, but you're still believing in what this offense can do.
I am. I was optimistic about them last week, thinking that the Eagles would push them to the air. The Cardinals did not want to get into a shootout. They actually went very run-heavy, but this is such a good matchup that I think they do have to go back to the passing game here. Seahawks rank dead last in passing efficiency allowed per dropback. They're 31st in PFF's coverage grades, and they don't pressure the quarterback. So this is an ideal get-right spot for this offense. And then on the Seahawks side, they actually haven't been a run-first team. They've been a balanced team this year. They're facing a Cardinals defense that is also very bad at stopping the pass. They rank dead last in passing success rate, dead last in PFF's coverage grades. They also don't pressure the passer. So I think you're starting all the usual fantasy relevant names here. And then we also do have some interesting replacement running backs in Kenneth Walker and Eno Benjamin. I think both are set up very well.
Barry, you've been excited about Kenneth Walker, obviously, since that second half last week. What are you expecting here?
Yeah, we talked about Eno Benjamin last segment. We think he's a mid-tier running back, too, here. But again, 83% of the snaps after Rashad Penny went down. He had the big run for the touchdown. You saw that there. Ultimately, 8 for 88 and the score, including that 69-yard scamper. What's exciting about is that, like, the Seahawks offensive line has played better than I think any of us expected. Geno has played better. And so this is a very viable offense. And as we just talked about fantasy environment, like, it's this perfect storm of a high-functioning offense, right, with a narrow target tree with Lockett and Metcalf, and so defenses have to respect that. Geno playing well, and so they can't just say, like, we're not worried about Geno. Like, Geno's hitting, like, this isn't Jimmy Garoppolo throwing a 3-yard pass and then Deebo Samuel running for 60 yards. I mean, those are legit bombs to Lockett and Metcalf, real NFL big-time throws, and so they have to respect the pass game, which opens up the run game here on a team that's averaging 21 running back touches per game. And so given how bad the defense is played, it's this great environment of, like, they're constantly going to have to be throwing. They're constantly going to have to play up-tempo, to Pat's point as well. I think Kenneth Walker has a huge week this week. You know, I told you I ranked him just ahead of Eno Benjamin. I think he's a mid-tier RB2. I think he's got RB1 upside. I think he's got RB1 upside for the rest of the year as well.
The Seahawks starting 2 rookie tackles this year that have been slam dunks for them in Abe Lucas and Charles Cross, and that's allowed Geno and the weapons to continue to flourish. All right.
Yeah, the only question, the only reason I don't have him inside my top 10 on Walker, I just want to point this out, is that I just don't know how much passing game. He can catch the ball.
Sure.
But they also like DJ Dallas there, and so the Cardinals have actually been decent against the run this year, so I think the volume and his explosiveness gets you there with Walker, which is why I'm excited about him, but like if he was playing the Lions, he'd be a top 10 guy for me. You know, that's all I'm saying. It's I want to see how they use him and DJ Dallas this game. That's something to watch.
Fantasy poor matchups. We got 2 of them here. These are the letdowns of the week. Brace yourself. Starting with the 49ers at the Falcons. 49ers favored by 5.5 points on the road to Atlanta. The over-under in this game is 44.5 points. We know Jeff Wilson is going to get his in this game. We know Tevin Coleman has been signed once again from the practice squad in this game. But despite that, why were you down on this game here, Pat?
So one reason that I'm down is because Jimmy Garoppolo, he's been very efficient this year.
You don't need to say more. We get it.
Done. And then it's the Falcons.
Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah,
all right, Broncos, Chargers.
No, go ahead, Pat.
He's been highly inaccurate. Yeah. So that efficiency, I think, is very fragile. And if he has a couple errant throws, I think Kyle Shanahan could pivot hard to the run here. This is a run defense that they should have no trouble against. The Falcons rank 30th in rushing efficiency allowed, 30th in rushing success rate. So the 49ers don't need to pass here if they don't want to, and I think maybe, they won't want to if Garoppolo kind of craters a bit. On the other side, the Falcons are not going to push the 49ers to the air at all. They're going to try to run as much as they can get away with. They are the second most run-heavy team in the league, only to the Bears. They are hiding Marcus Mariota, and now they are facing a very strong 49ers defense. So they're going to look to limit volume, grind out a slow-paced game. Pretty much in terms of fantasy options, you need touchdowns. If someone doesn't get in the end zone here, they're going to be a tough play.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I will say I think this is a coming out party for George Kittle, right? And so I think the narrative on Kittle is somewhat different if he scores that touchdown against the Rams. You remember 2 weeks ago, like he had 1 foot in, 1 foot out of bounds just barely. So I think the narrative of him is a little bit different. It looks like you were right. Garoppolo's highly inaccurate, but feels like he's starting to get more into a rhythm there. 6 targets last week for Kittle, 5 for 47. He's running en route on 85% of dropbacks since he came back. This is Kittle, right? And then you think about this matchup with the Falcons, who are bottom 3 in the NFL in both receptions and yards allowed to opposing tight ends. So I have him as a top 5 tight end this week. I'm in on Kittle. This is a Kittle week. And then, by the way, then I'm selling high because I want out of the Kittle business for the season. But I do think this is a week that we think Kittle will be there. Jeff, I'm not worried about Tevin Coleman. That was, sort of because they were blowing him out. I still think Jeff Wilson Jr. is a viable top 12 running back just because of the volume he gets.
Yeah, if anyone's a good bet for a touchdown, it's Jeff Wilson.
Yeah. There we go. On the Falcons side of the ball, though, I think you probably, just based on volume, you have to throw Drake London out there. I'm at wide receiver 27 this week, so again, wide receiver 3.
Flex play, yeah.
We're hoping they are hiding Mariota, but I do think the Falcons could, similar to what they did to the Panthers last week, the Niners could get it big, and they just have to throw here. The Niners defense is beat up. It's a pretty beat up defense that they come in here. It's a West Coast team traveling east for a 1 o'clock game. Game's in the dome here, and they're really good against tight ends. I ranked Kyle Pitts lower than I have all season long. I ranked him at 10. He made the hate list. You're probably still starting Kyle Pitts because he's down in that touchdown-dependent tight end range. And if you're starting a touchdown-dependent tight end, you probably want to start Kyle Pitts, even though he hasn't scored in America in his NFL career yet. But, as you see on your
That's
screen.
A wild stat.
That's a crazy stat.
It is crazy, right? He just the London game is the one there. But, I just wanted to talk about the fact. Look, Drake London's got a 33% target share. I know it was the bad game last week, but I think you probably still, if you've been starting Drake London, you're probably still starting him. Again, wide receiver 3, has some upside, but some flaws. I'm nervous about Kyle Pitts. I mean, how can you not be? How can you not be? So I'm a tight end 10. You're probably starting him reluctantly.
Yes,
is what you're doing with Kyle Pitts.
Our last fantasy poor matchup of the week: the Broncos at Chargers. If you said that in August, people would look at you like you are absolutely insane. But Broncos at Chargers. Chargers favored at home by 4.5 points.
You know what the Broncos should do? In the offseason, the Broncos should try to sign Geno Smith to like a $250 million contract. That's what they should do.
Big brain. Galaxy brain theory.
Exactly. I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
They have an issue at quarterback. There's a quarterback in Seattle who's good, that maybe they sign him to a big long-term contract.
And then the roles could be reversed. Russ is the backup for Geno.
I like that. That would be
great storyline. What a storyline.
So, listen, give credit to Russell Wilson. He's playing through that torn labrum.
I knew you were going to go with it.
He's gutting it out, because when you've got a partially torn labrum, you can't see to the right side. That's what happens. KJ Hamler was open, but he has the partially torn labrum. You can't see a wide open KJ Hamler with a partially torn labrum. Every doctor knows this.
It affects the eyes.
It affects the eyes.
Yeah, it goes right to the eyes.
100%. It's not his fault.
No,
exactly. He's playing through pain. He's a warrior.
Let's look at Russell Wilson's weekly finishes playing through this pain so far. Obviously not the season he was hoping for, guys, or what the Broncos were expecting in any way, shape, or form.
He's been bad. But, we'll always have that Week 4 game at the Raiders where he's the third best quarterback in fantasy.
Nobody can take it from us.
No, but he's got 3 straight. Out of the 5 weeks that he's started, he's been QB 24 or worse in 3 of them. The other one was the Week 1 game against the Seahawks at QB 14. Let's ride. Listen, I always love the Broncos. They came through for me. They gave me the win. They sent me a belt buckle. But, jokes aside, Russell Wilson is not playing well, and I don't expect him to. Nothing that you. If you're starting him, you're doing 2 things. You're banking on the fact that the Chargers defense actually hasn't been great this year. You know what I mean? The secondary has struggled. They're a bottom 12 pass defense so far on the season, allowing the third most touchdown passes to opposing quarterbacks. So you're banking on the matchup and just Russell Wilson's name, because nothing you've seen from him gives you any sense of confidence here.
And in fact, the Broncos have been run first on first down, which is something you typically do when you're trying to hide your quarterback. So at this point, we're worried, how much faith the Broncos really have in Wilson. This is a team that I think they're so conservative. We need an opposing offense to force them to the air if we're going to get volume. And I'm a little bit concerned about the Chargers side here, because they have a 6th-round left tackle at left tackle, 6th-round rookie there. He let up 6 pressures last week. Played very well in his first game 2 weeks ago. but let up twice as many pressures as the rest of their line combined last week, ranked 119th in PFF's offensive line grades.
Jamari Sawyer, he was primarily a guard for Georgia. They had to flex him to tackle in a pinch, and should not be his expectations at the NFL.
No, and it creates a situation for Herbert where is he going to be able to go downfield, or is it just going to be a lot of checkdowns, a little bit more conservative of an offense for the Chargers? I think they'll be okay here, but I don't know that they're going to be pushing the Broncos into a lot of volume. They've been so efficient that we need that volume.
Yeah, I mean, look, going through some of the Broncos here real quickly, I think you're still starting Cortland Sutton, right? But Jerry Jeudy has 4 fewer receptions in every game so far this season, right? Chargers allowed the 6th fewest yards per reception to opposing wide receivers. I'm at wide receiver 39 this week, Jerry Jeudy.
It's just not happening.
He hasn't hit 55 yards, and I mean, he had the one big play that he ran for a touchdown. But other than that, this guy hasn't had 55 yards in a game since week 1, since that one big play, right? And then you go to the running backs here, right? I mean, he has 1 total touchdowns in of the season. He hasn't had 60 yards rushing in any game. I think Latavius Murray will be active in this game, and we don't know what his role is going to be. Last week was the first week that Gordon hasn't fumbled in a game, so I'm nervous on Gordon, who I just have at running back 21 as well. You're probably still starting Mike. You're still starting Mike Williams, but
you don't feel great about it.
You don't feel great about it.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.